All right, good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Finance Committee. Tonight's Monday, March 24th. Tonight we'll be going over the Region 10 budget, reviewing the updates that have come in throughout the course of the budget cycle, and then begin our deliberations as a committee. So with that, we will start with public comment. And seeing none, we will move on to item 2, which is the Region 10 budget. And we have Sean Shabbat here to walk us through that. Nick?
Yeah, I was just getting it set up back there. 1 second.
You are sharing screen. Okay.
There we go.
All right. My name's Sean Shabbat. I'm the Superintendent Director of Region 10, and Sybil Brewer is with me this evening. She's our business manager at Region 10, and you can see in front of you, and it should have been in your packet, this is our proposed FY26 budget overall, and the top half is our estimated revenues. And then the bottom half is the breakdown by the percentages according to the cooperative agreement that the 3 boards have agreed with, Region 10 Cooperative Board, and it's an increase overall of 6.21%. Originally, we had a budget just slightly under 6% at 5.9 something percent, and then I had recommended that the board make some additional cuts, but the board put back in field trips for our Region 10 students, so that brought it slightly over 6.21%. Then the next page, whoops, wasn't so hot.
You were on it.
There we go. Thank you. So these are our budget drivers that has the increase in the budget. Obviously, the biggest is salaries. And just a reminder that our teacher collective bargaining agreement, along with our ed techs and custodial, is based on the weighted average of our 3 sending districts. So where MSAD 75 is approximately 36.4%, according to the cooperative agreement, those increases represent 36.4% of your negotiated salary increases with your collective bargaining agreements. So that is a concern of mine that I have, is the rate of salary increases. That's our biggest driver, as I'm sure you are aware. And we take the weighted average of our 3 sending districts. And so I don't know, and I've shared this with our staff as well, if an 8.51 year-over-year increase is really sustainable over the long haul. So that's a concern of mine. Ed tech salaries similarly is at 4.41%, and that's based on the weighted average. Admin salaries are up 7.4%. The admin is budgeted for 4% across the board for all the administrators. However, the reason why it's 7.4 is we have a new assistant director, and we use the weighted average of our high school assistant principals to bring that up to similar type position. So that's why it's 7.4. But moving forward, it should maintain relatively at 4%, 3 to 4%, depending on where we land. Non-contract, again, is at 4%. Custodial salaries, 6.64. And be careful, Amy. And 6.64, and that's based on, again, on the collective bargaining agreement. So overall, Salaries are up 7.57%. And then some of the additional items that are our biggest ticket items for this year, health and dental. We've estimated 8% increase, and that's still an unknown at this time. Hopefully, it comes in at 8 or less. But also, because we're so small, if teachers, instructors, or employees change their plan, it can have a bigger impact because we don't have that many employees overall. So it's up 15%. Then as you folks have the paid, the new main paid family leave, 0.5%. And JMG, we have a JMG specialist. Our first year, JMG paid the full cost of that. Last year, we picked up $10,000 of that, and then it increased. So you can see the 13,000, excuse me, and it's up to 27,000. We are expanding Region 10 again for next year. We are in an agreement with Maine Maritime Academy and BIW. Maine Maritime has leased the old Wayfair building over on the base, and which was originally the commissary. And so they have a 25-year lease, and we're partnering with them, and we're going to start building out some additional programs. Because at Region 10, we don't have any more classrooms. We have no more footprint available for space for additional classes, and there is a need for additional classes. So that's where that lease comes from, that 11,000. And then Honeywell is we moved that to a comprehensive service. That's our heating and ventilation system for the school. So it covers all aspects of that. So as the building as that system ages, those agreements will be covered. We can maintain a more stable cost structure. So again, overall, it's at 6.21%. And according to the budget your tentative budget that you published, we're still less than 1% of your overall budget. So we try to maintain that status quo. We're roughly about 0.79, if I remember.
0.76.
0.76. 300, so. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And if I can't, Sybil really knows it in and out better than I do at times.
I just want to say, whoa, it's very loud today. I just wanted to say, I continue to be so impressed with what you guys do with less than 1% of our budget, and ditto, RSU 5 and Brunswick. And it's really impressive and such an important part of what makes this region. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
I just, this is more of a curious mechanical question, because we did our contract. I guess the updated numbers we have a new teacher's contract. How does that exactly work? Because now I know our scale has been a little bit crazy. If yours is a blend, what does that even mean?
I'll let Sybil speak to that, but basically it takes has taken her a long time, especially with MSAD 75 teacher contract.
We're cleaning it up.
Exactly. So I'll let her speak, and I don't want to steal her thunder.
Oh.
It is probably the most time-consuming piece that I have. We actually have a spreadsheet that was created by Kelly Wentworth, who was the Brunswick business manager. She's now working over at RSU 5. So we use that formula to blend those, and I plug in all of the numbers. I use your step, because you have two breakdowns. You have your salaries, and then you have your steps. So we plug those in. And then basically what it does is that formulates on your percentage what that's going to be. It gives a blend. So I take all those numbers from each school, and then each one of them is used by the percentage that it's supposed to be to blend into the teacher's salary for that level.
You also have a scale with all the
Yes,
dimensions on it.
absolutely.
Each
Yes,
number is a blend of the 3 units.
correct. So that basically is
Because we have different number of
3
steps.
different schools, yes. Yep. So you have your own section, and Brunswick has its own section, and RSU 5 has its own section, and then those all blend together with the formulas to make sure that we're doing the percentage correctly. And then me being who I am, I will actually spot check and make sure that I can do the hard math and make sure that it comes out correctly. So it is very time consuming. So when we have an open contract, that makes it very difficult because I'm waiting. And then what I do if we have an open contract is I actually do a straight percentage. It's not great math, but it helps me get to where I need to be. So if I'm doing a straight 6% in an open contract, sometimes it'll hit or miss, so to speak. So some of them will be a little bit less than the 6, and then maybe some will be over the 6. We always hope that it blends out correctly. So this year we have, I think it's 1 open contract for teachers. So no, 2. I have 2 schools right now. So each one of those schools was built in with a 6% increase. And then once I get the numbers, I plug them in.
We have a new one. You get our new one?
Not yet, but I will.
We voted for it. We're waiting for the teachers, but
Yeah, and we can't get it until obviously it's been
Right.
ratified by both
Right.
groups.
okay, is it close? We're close.
I did get the support one. I did find the support one. So
Thanks.
hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll be sure to forward it to you once both parties vote on it. Absolutely.
I was just going to say thank you for the rigor. It sounds like you went through in the process to get here with the back and forth, and the board, your board looking to keep some things in that maybe were looking to be coming out. I just want to ask if there are anything else that you did take out that you're concerned about, or are there any things in there that are, because this has been, it's such a great thing for our students, and so we want to make sure that you responsibly, you have what you need at the same time, and my guess is you do. I'm just looking to hear a little more about that.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I feel like when we received our initial request, we were up over, what, 16% increase. And so I asked our finance committee roughly where they would like to see us. And so then I made those decisions or those recommendations to the board. Some of our instructors were not particularly thrilled about it, but I definitely feel like all of our cuts we can maintain, and we're not taking away necessarily from student learning or their experience at Region 10. The one that was the hardest was probably the field trips. To help build aspirations for CTE students to go to maybe down to Southern Maine and visit that campus down there, because lots of high schools do their own field trips for college tours and things like that. So, but our board felt strongly that our kids as a group should have that opportunity. But no, to answer your question, I think all of our cuts that we made, more of them were wish lists that our instructors have. Whenever you build a budget, you ask everybody to put it in and you have those conversations, but there was the ability without hurting children to make those cuts.
That's great. Thank you. And I think what kind of triggered it for me too is in our trips around the different school or the different towns that we've had in the last 10 days, hearing from the different communities and priorities. I think we heard a lot of value in the education and the pieces that our students are able to get through Region 10. And so just want to make sure that you're feeling good about how that's continuing.
I'm feeling good about it. I don't feel like there's anything that we had to cut, that we did recommend to the board that's going to impact students' ability to learn. And we have been fortunate over the past few years, and even before Sybil and I started the same summer, we have been able to run a surplus in our budget every year. And so we made a recommendation to the board, and the board adopted it in our tentative budget to move some of our funds, undesignated funds, to our capital reserve, because that building's old. It was built in, 82, 83, and needs some work. And we are doing the bridge replacement that's starting, that front entrance, that starts next week, and will be done by the end of July, hopefully. But there's some windows that need to be replaced in that building. There's certainly the parking lot needs a new paving job and complete around that. And as we continue to grow the programs and students continue to be interested in Region 10, we'll need to find additional space, and certainly that partnership with Maine Maritime over on the Brunswick at the landing is certainly what we're eyeing. And as we expand, we'll be able to increase our programming, and with more students potentially attending Region 10, we'll have more state subsidy. That doesn't take away from your subsidy from Mount Ararat High School and MSAD 75. So I see it as a win-win.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions at all? All right, thank you both for coming, especially tonight with the weather. And Sybil, it's great to have you here. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, so next agenda item we have is to review any updates. And I know that Evan, you had mentioned one today, maybe that some stuff, and just wanted to kind of open up the floor for anything that you or Heidi may have to walk us through.
Yeah, thank you. So in this last week of going around to the towns, I've had some feedback that we've received and do a little bit of research on one of the things that kept on coming up. One of those was the Busrite and Traversa software switch that we presented to the various towns. The switch from Busrite to Traversa was looking at a $32,000 increase in our software that we use for the buses for this coming year for implementation, project management, setting up the routes on the computer and all that. So I did my due diligence on Friday. I went over to the bus garage and really dug into what would be the benefit of switching over to Traversa. And it was that, you know, that student, that parent visibility piece of things. And I wanted to know more about that. So I asked Katie Good and Thomas, who were the two administrators over there. And I said, how often is it that someone actually calls you to find out where the buses are? And they said, it only really happens on early release days or delayed starts when there's a weather event. And it's generally about 4 to 5 people, parents, who are the ones reaching out. And I thought that was interesting. And I said, well, how do you respond to them? And they said, well, we have GPS trackers in our buses through the radios already, so we can look to see where the buses are. And then it's just a quick, hey, parent, this is where the bus is. You should expect it 5 to 10 minutes, whatever the case may be. So for a $32 or a $32,000 increase, to me, it didn't feel justifiable when there are other things in our budget that feel very important to me. I think we can make do with our current routing software that we have, where it does still optimize routes, I learned on Friday. And it seems to work pretty well as is. The parent visibility side is obviously the biggest thing that could be, that could potentially go away by not making this switch. But I think in a tight budget season, it might be an important thing for just the committee to talk about, because it is a $32,000 expense. So I think that we can make do with our current software, and we wouldn't have to put that to the taxpayers.
Do you know off the top of your head, and if the answer is no, that is okay, do we pay like a multi-year contract on that software? So when we re-up with what we have, will it be a 3-year contract, or?
I actually don't know the answer to
That's
that.
okay. Just curious, like when, because it sounded like there were some other reasons that it might be beneficial, but they weren't necessarily the driving choices, as I recall. But just curious, like when you would be able to reevaluate it if we forego it this time. That's
Yeah, I don't have that answer right at the moment. And then my other piece that I'd like to propose as well is last year we allocated $20,000 to go towards the Orion to cover salary, benefits, and custodial fees. And I think that that would be another good thing for us to implement. We do have a small fund balance that we maintain at the Orion, but there is a lighting board that will need to be replaced. It's been, I think, since 2020 that it needed to be replaced, and I think that it is coming due here pretty soon. That expense is about $7,800, and we do have the money in our fund balance currently, and we do continue to see building use fees climb because more associations and other events are happening at the Orion. But I think just to be prudent with the fund balance that we have there and just the variability in who books out the Orion, I think it's a good idea to maintain that $20,000 that we set aside last year for this coming fiscal year. Yes.
Yeah, this is a shame on me, I guess. I just thought, I assumed it was in the MOE because we had it last year. So yeah, I'm all for it. I thought it was already in there.
Yeah, and that was also partially my fault in learning how our fund structure is. The Orion is a 6,400 fund classification where our general fund is a 1,000. So I didn't put it into the 1,000 because it's a 6,400 program. So I kind of just learned the necessity of that. The way that it was set up last year was a transfer from our general fund into the Orion 6,400 account. So that's a learning moment for me, and I think I caught it in time for us to be able to mitigate it moving forward.
Do I remember something about the sound in the Orion also needs work?
Yeah, that was something that was upgraded just this current fiscal year. And that happened, I think, right in the summertime. And it was a bigger expense, and that's kind of what prompted the original transfer of the funds to the Orion.
And I would add that in last year's Finance Committee discussions, it was definitely discussed as a bit of a permanent commitment. And obviously, every year we could assess, can we afford it or not? But I think the idea was, absent someone telling us to cease the $20,000, I think that the board, the committee and then the board, and you guys can tell me if I'm misremembering, were committed to maintaining that kind of contribution.
That's why I.
Yeah.
Mechanically, I had no idea
Yes.
how it worked, but
Yeah.
But I caught it, so.
good job.
How will that be going forward? Is that now, if we had another business manager at some point, not that you better go anywhere, but just is there a process to that is now?
Yeah, so I changed the language on the actual account string. So it says transfer out Orion instead of just like transfer without any descriptor to it. So I put transfer out Orion. And if someone pulls historical data, at least last year or the last 2 years now, they'll be able to see that account is something that has money set against it. So someone who pulls just a general, what did we spend last year, should have that flagged when they do their analysis.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right? Absent anything else there, Heidi, assuming there's nothing else. I think that means we can probably transition into our deliberation phase, which short of I don't know how we want to go about talking through this. I created in the footsteps of Amy's last year, attempted or approach to how we did this, a spreadsheet that helped capture kind of maybe discussion points. I think what we've seen has been the discussion points till now, additions, reductions and things. And so that is one way to do this. I know we have a file as well that Evan shared with us that has quite a bit of information that may be something we can look at some point as well. But do people have a preference for how we do this?
Yeah.
All right.
I was gonna say, I think that I'm very happy, I'm thrilled with Evan's document, but I think that would be too much. to
Could
go
be,
through.
yeah. And this feels like a good starting point maybe and can just at least even guide the discussion. So here is where I may need help. Do you know how to put it up on the screen? I feel like you did last year, but
I'm
Here,
pretty
can
sure
somebody
Nick helped.
okay.
Nick may be sending you an invite through your email to be able to project up there.
Just shared it with you. So we'll see if that helps because me trying to do it may be the slowest approach here. But I have Hudson right next to me, so I guess I can phone a friend. That's did that work? Or did you get it? I have not saved it on there. I should save it there. I just literally did it yesterday, like some organization with discussion.
I will also say I did upload the Region 10 presentation up into the shared finance drive while
Awesome,
they were,
thank you.
while they were presenting. You should see it.
All right, so basically what I did here was just tried to capture what the additions were that we were looking to move forward and the reductions that were in the proposal, and kind of were Heidi's proposed reductions. And I didn't, in our different presentations, we've had full asks listed and then reductions and then kind of like the net. So this is really just the net, I guess I would say. And you can change that bus rate. I actually, maybe we should, hold on, we should have the discussion when we get there, sorry. So I guess if that does this make sense to everybody? We're looking at it here and literally it would just be going through, talking about them all. And then there's a third bucket that I just put for the committee recommended, if there's things we want to add back, the second BCAB for non-ARAD or something as an example. We can do that, and then my poor Excel skills may or may not capture it. And and I definitely didn't put anything in F, so if we say yes, we're gonna have to type the dollar amount in. I was like, I tried to figure out like an if formula and I didn't, so, okay. All right, so the regular ed social worker at MAMS. I think this was, do we want to just take votes or do we want to discuss it? Or how about we'll take a vote, we'll go to a vote really quick of the committee, and if there's concerns or questions, ask them at that time, and concerns or questions are welcome, so. All right, so regular ed social worker for MAMS. Okay, so that's a yes. The grade 4-5 teacher at Bodenham. And this was for the large class, it was a second.
And it's up from 25 or 26 in the
It's a
current
large
runs.
number
yeah.
anyway, right? Yeah,
I think Jessica's thumb us up earlier.
okay, sorry. Okay,
Yes.
yes, okay, perfect, thank you, sorry for my
No, you're
lack
good.
of
I-
awareness. All right, the BCBA, and this was for MAMS. We had originally looked at MAMS and MTA, and then the MTA one did not go forward. And we were going to try to get one here. I highlighted this pay amount, Heidi, because I think we had different middle school and high school listed differently. So I just wanted to ask and make sure we were comfortable with that amount. Okay, so that'll go back to 85,000. Yeah,
I was just going to say, knowing that we're trying to prioritize, I think I stand by the administrative recommendation of prioritizing the middle school, which is not to say we don't think the high school should get this, but I think if we've got to pick one, I think this is the right move.
yeah, Amy.
Sort of a practical question. I feel like that might be a hard position to fill. So it might even be too ambitious to think we could find two in the first year anyway.
That's why we cut one, because I said the same thing to Amy. I think it's going to be really hard to fill
Right.
for two BCBAs in the state. So one, and then we'll go from
Yeah.
there. And that position as MAMS will be able to pick up things at the high school as well as needed.
Great. Any more questions or anything? Or, all right, so in favor? All right. It's a yes, thank you. Next we had the kindergarten / pre-K at Harpswell. I think this was listed as two different positions initially, and it came down to one, and I don't know that a decision has been made on where that would be, so I'll probably open that up for you to speak to a little bit.
I was gonna say maybe we could do the other ones first, just clear up the
Okay.
bus right in yonder and come back to that, because I feel like that's gonna be our longest
More of a discussion. Great. So let's do that. Let's move on to pre-K at Woodside. Everybody's thumbs up there. bus rate, the removal of this, so this, rather than having this be there, we'd strike this, would be the proposal from Evan. So everybody in favor of striking?
Thank you, Evan, for that consideration.
So,
Yes here, does it mean? Should I
You can put no for, or however you want, how do you,
actually, maybe you move it down to the superintendent reductions and then.
or just
say we-
delete
we
it?
agree.
Okay, yeah, I'll strike.
I would just, yeah, I would just,
I mean, I don't know if we have to keep track of it as a, we don't, because it never got, was never in.
it would, yeah, and it wouldn't be
Okay.
going forward.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
That's a
can you just
no.
zero out the dollar amount? Yonder pouches? All right, and I will say to that, I was approached by multiple teachers over the weekend at the middle school play, and they all were grateful that this was going forward, so appreciate all the work everybody did to get this here and what this will do for us, so.
I also wanted to comment that some of the kids have come around on the Yonda pouches too, and I think that's really, really significant.
Yeah,
And this is all in support, biggest thumbs up, 100%. I know we talked about covering that with fund balance money. I just want to make sure that that's getting accounted for on your guys' end. Since it's a one-time purchase and we talked about using some of that balance to cover that, I think, right? If I'm making that up, call me out on it, but I feel like we talked about using.
I will
I'm
be
making that
honest,
up.
I don't recall.
Right, with my apologies, we don't have to make that decision today, but I would propose that then at least, in my addled brain.
So it's not a go-forward expense, it's a one-time expense.
Exactly.
is your
Because I-
intent, right?
This is the kind of thing I feel like would fit into that. I know that we are using less fund balance this year relative to like the 100,000 for the strategic planning, right? You know what I mean? So this might be another
Yep.
area to pick some of that up.
But also, I don't know how we're accounting for replacement costs and wear and tear.
Yep.
I think you're right that there will be something, it won't be 50 grand. I don't know if is it a 4-year lifespan? Who knows? Great question.
All right, so that brings us back to the kindergarten pre-K discussion. Go ahead, Heidi, yes.
I had the opportunity today to meet with Evan and Amanda because part of the proposal with either pre-K or kindergarten was based on Title I numbers. And I think most of you have read the letter that I put out, which is kind of the same thing that we did last year. We had to figure out the rank and distribution of each of the schools. And Evan was really quick to pick this up. And so today we were able to go in and rank and order really the amount of money that each of the schools would receive based on Title I funds. And last year, Harpswell was able to receive 1.5 amount of teachers based on the rank and distribution. But this year, they're a little bit lower on the totem pole. So we have to add more money to Williams Cone School, which reduces it and only gives us 1 teacher for Harpswell instead of what I was hoping for would be 2. So I met with Anita today and talked about several different ideas and whether or not we could use that Title I teacher as Harpswell is a school-wide school. We could still do that. And it doesn't have to necessarily be a kindergarten teacher, but there are some needs that are showing up that I don't have 100% solid answers on as to whether we actually need a Title I intervention teacher there still. And so we're working on that, but let me kind of go down through a couple of things. Right now we have a first grade class that has 29 students in it, and within that class there's 2 teachers. We have current kindergarten class, which is moving to the first grade, and there's 22 students and there's 1 teacher.
So that first one you said is going to be next year's second grade?
Yeah, would be
Okay.
next year's second grade.
Okay.
We have a current kindergarten class that's moving up will be next year's first grade with 22 students and 1 teacher. So projected again for the fall for incoming kindergarten is projected based on some information that Harpswell administration received from area daycares, is there a potential of 29 students that will enroll as kindergartners. However, we only have 15 students that are registered at the moment and 2 that are pending. So it's a little bit of a chance that we say, yes, you need another kindergarten teacher because you have 29, because 29 have not registered at this point in time. So we're making decisions on that kind of proposed amount. So Anita, the principal, has worked with her staff, and let's talk about the first and second grade for next year. So next year, they're going to have a first grade teacher, a second grade teacher, and then a multi-age first and second grade. And that takes care of that group of students
And that is within the teachers that exist there already?
currently.
Okay.
Yep, the teachers that exist currently. Yep.
And just, sorry, and I know you've said this, but just, I'm
Yep.
slowly keeping up.
That's okay.
Total kids impact, total kids that will be in first and second grade next year.
Thank you.
Thank you. So 51 in 3
The
classes.
Yeah.
317s.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I am still advocating, however, I'm not sure if we can do this yet. I am still advocating for a pre-K classroom. We have 45 students that are registered for pre-K at this point. So that's good news for all of them. We have several from Harpswell, not a lot from Harpswell, but we have some other options for that as well. So I did have the conversation with Anita regarding using that Title I teacher as a kindergarten teacher. That would allow us to add the addition of the pre-K teacher addition. However, there are some needs, and I'm going down through the list of all the students to see what the needs are for whether or not that interventionist would be needed as a Title I teacher or not. And that's still a little bit unclear. I would really love to be able to find, maybe we move something else, and if we go this direction and be able to allow a kindergarten teacher through something else in the budget, or we just say we're going to add both. But there's still a little bit of unclarity with how much the needs are. Harpswell does have a pretty robust staffing model with 11.5 teachers, 11 full-time and a half-time Title I. That half-time will leave next year because of the rank and distribution. So we'll be down to 11 full-time. If we add one, we'll be back up to 12. So to give you my recommendation, I would love to have both, but it's unclear how much Title I is actually needed for students in the lower grades, because we have a RTI academic who works with grades 3 through 5. And that Title I teacher was working with the first and second graders who needed interventions. And there was a list of about maybe 12 to 14 students, if I'm remembering, total this year, but that list could be different next year. So there's still some unknowns that we're kind of working with. We could hold for a little bit of time, and we could say we're going to have a pre-K teacher and hope that the kindergarten registrations increase, and then look at it in maybe a few weeks to see where we're at. Or we could just say, we're only going to have a kindergarten teacher added to the budget, and then hold off on the pre-K until next year. Those are options, and I'm just not 100% sure right at this moment, because there's still that unknown of how many are actually going to come in, and then what the needs specifically are with those kiddos that are currently there in our TI Title I intervention. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's where we're at the moment.
So, so in the school, there's the Title I, the title might not be interventionist, but let's say that Title I, and then there's 2 other interventionists,
Yes, correct. There's
and
a,
they sort of do multi-ages and
right.
float
So there's
around.
an RTIA, which is an academic response to intervention full-time. And that person is with the students that are in grades 3 through 5 right now. And what they did in Harpswell is they used the Title I teacher this past year as a interventionist for K through 2, rather than assigning
Okay.
that to a kindergarten teacher. So it could be that, other schools have larger caseloads. So there's that piece because, Williams Cone has an RTIA with 200 and something and only an RTIA this year without a title teacher. Does that make sense? So they have the RTIA, which is an
So
academic,
that interventionist has a bigger load.
bigger caseloads. And so that's what you're talking about when you're doing these types of interventions and assigning those, is like, do we increase the caseloads? Do we use this in a different way? We have the ability to use the Title I because we changed over to a school-wide school, which allows us to put that person anywhere we want to. And the reason to supplement the budget would be to decrease class sizes, and that is approved by the Department of Education. Amanda has had communication with them and told them exactly what we are doing, and they said that is exactly what we should be doing. So it's really just a matter of, do we take the chance or not, and add, we're kind of just doing this right at the moment, shuffling things around.
And am I correct in thinking that the change in Title I apportionment is based on the financial, because Title I is economically disadvantaged money, right? And so that's the form enrollment kind of stuff that we do every year, right? Like that's identifying economically disadvantaged students. So this incoming year, Harpswell has a fewer proportion of economically disadvantaged families relative to the rest of the district.
Exactly, and we spent a good hour with Evan, learned it in like 10 minutes. And then Amanda and I were like, we'll try these two combinations. So I think it was 7 teachers or 5 teachers and 2 pairs. And we're trying to, you have to have a certain amount of money by percent. And so we're like, okay, move this person here because some teachers cost an incredible amount of money and some teachers are just starting out and they're lower. And we were trying different combinations to line up to the per pupil cost to keep them in their rank that they were supposed to be in.
So the para that's in the kindergarten classroom this year,
Mhm.
would that person be assigned to to stay in kindergarten?
Possibly, yeah, depending on the needs. This year, that's where the para is assigned because of the extra
If we had
students. But
20
that-
kids,
Yeah.
it would be teacher and para.
It could be, yeah, it could be. The para that is in that is not in Title I. It's a regular funded position.
Right, but
Yep.
they're already there in the school,
Mhm.
in the budget. in the-
Correct, yeah, we haven't removed that.
um,
Pairs that are in the rank and distribution for what we were just talking about are in the Title I, and they're currently in Bowdoin and Bowdoinham. But with the rank and distribution changing, and folks that work in Title I know this, that it could change because of numbers.
It's okay. If we don't do the pre-K, what does that do to the partnership grant that we've taken on with CDS, where we said we would
Do anything, we
get less money or anything?
we might, but I don't think so, because that grant is based on CDS, and we get to choose how many pre-K programs that we want to add in. So we get that amount of money, same amount of money, I think it's like $400,000. And we can use it to enhance our current programs or to build a new program. So it really doesn't change it. It doesn't break the partnership at all.
If we don't do the pre-K teacher, then any Harpswell students that want to do pre-K would choose one of the other SAD 75 schools.
Yep, we'd put them in, yep. And the other thing is if, well, yeah, yes, correct.
Can I ask a question on top of that? Like, what's the fiscal year 2027 or 2027 impact to adding pre-K now and getting those 16 kids into our student count?
Yeah. My understanding, and the numbers is it's about $4,000 per student for pre-K. So like when you have money
It's
for
like
them.
64,000 and we're
Yep.
saying it's 85,000
So
for a
then
teacher.
But it's going to be more than that because it's 2 adults. It'll be teacher and a para for a class of 16.
Okay.
So you have an 8-to-1 student to adult ratio.
Do we have any reason to know that we would have 16 Harpswell kids in pre-K?
Not at this point, because we only
There's
have,
no pre-written, there's no.
we have
like-
the applications out. I've been posting it on our parent square and sending that out. And we have 45 kids right at the moment, and it's throughout the entire district, less in Harpswell.
So we could add a position and end up with 8 kids or something.
We
like
could,
that.
yep. But we also have an opportunity to collaborate with some other surrounding areas, but we won't do that unless we have the place
I
for
see.
that.
So we will fill the 16 seats, whether they're from Harpswell or
Correct.
not.
Yes.
Yeah, Frank.
So let me get this clear. Are you asking for a kindergarten teacher based upon the numbers and a pre-K?
I'm asking for one or the other because I feel like it would, adding 2 positions down there with not really knowing whether or not we're actually going to have 29 students entering kindergarten is really still, we don't know yet.
Can a pre-K, or excuse me, can a kindergarten, if we were to move forward with a plan of 2 kindergartens and that didn't come to fruition, can that adjust to a pre-K offering? 3 months before or something? Or like-
Yeah, we absolutely can. Yes.
Go ahead.
And just to follow up with Frank again, for anyone listening, Heidi has reported that the Harpswell administrative team has come up with a plan to deal with next year's 1st and 2nd grade without adding a teacher. So while we're talking about kindergarten, the concerns we heard about this year's kindergarten class are being addressed with existing staffing, bringing down class size for next year.
And I think the other concern we heard there was 20 kids or 29 that they knew of and.
Potential
large
kindergartners.
class. Yeah.
Totally, totally. I'm just
totally.
saying that regarding the request, the reason there's not a request for the 1st, 2nd grade is because they have addressed that.
Because they figured, yep.
I feel like the answer is probably no, but you wouldn't do a pre-K, K combined classroom, would you?
Maybe. I can't say no to everything. I mean, we would look
No.
at that too.
That's not
There's a possibility, but really,
precluded by any
Yeah.
rules.
it might be. I just don't know
Okay.
really if that is the case.
Oh, sorry, Jessica, go ahead.
It seems like, excuse me, that not knowing the enrollment that's the sort of hard part here. I assume that there's some outreach to the town, and does the town push it out on the website and
Yep.
such? I can't remember. It's been such a long
Yeah.
time since I registered mine.
Yeah. So we've communicated with different town managers and the towns and sent the link for registration, plus I've sent it out on Parent Square. We've posted it on the website, posted it on Facebook. So we've tried to reach out to as many people possible that we can.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that I know of a few families who just don't necessarily realize they need to register. So I've tipped them off. But yeah, I'm just thinking like, where would they get that information? So those all sound good.
Right on the website, right on our main, on our special ed, on our MSAD 75
Right.
website.
But if they didn't think to look on the website, so I'm like going upstream here, trying to think how we can capture those people that wouldn't be, I don't know if mailers, like, is that legal or appropriate if you've been tipped off by daycare to leave word at the daycare or
We have.
directly mail them?
Yeah, we have left. We
Okay.
have, yes, we've said,
Okay, great.
please register. Please have your families register.
It's a perennial problem. I feel like we add the position and figure out what the need is as we go. And I would even be open, if it turns out we have 16 pre-K and 30K, we might need to even talk about another position if that materializes. But I think one for sure.
I agree with that. What I'm thinking through, like, if we need to, the pre-K should be a priority as Harpswell's a tier 3 school and, and it's probably, I don't know if there's any research that indicates how, correcting or addressing those needs can be achieved through pre-K. I know you shared a lot of anecdotal information kind of with us in this process. And so all of that makes me think that that's probably the best place to start and address that.
Yes.
And if we know that's a problem we have, that maybe that's something we should be thinking about investing in now.
Have the space in Harpswell for sure to add another classroom. And I think early intervention is what we want to be looking at across the board. That's why we're really pushing this for all of our schools to have.
So then are we making the decision
This is,
affirmatively, we will have pre-K at Harpswell?
I mean, I guess potentially the way I was looking at this is that becomes a yes there, and then down in our bucket below, we say we want to add the other one, if that's what we want to do, if that's what we're saying. So
that
we're,
becomes yes, pre-K.
yes, pre-K, and then down below becomes yes, kindergarten. Or, probably doesn't matter. Oh, I was thinking like down like lines 24, 25 or something like that. I don't know what I'm guessing the numbers.
Yeah.
'Cause my computer shut off, but like down in there, like add it to that.
Yeah.
Just so we can track it, where it came
that
from,
it's
and that
a-
it's, Heidi asked for one, and we said, you can have, you know, we think the one, but we want this other one too, that Finance Committee suggested that. I think it's important to note that if we decide that. That I'm not saying we've decided that, I'm just saying if we do, that I think that should be noted, that that came from us.
And I know last year we had the same, we did uncertainty, we put it as a reserve item to be tapped if need be, rather than add it in March.
I have one question. Do we, and this isn't really specific to the Finance Committee, but since that's who's here and we have a few more folks, do we feel that universal pre-K is something we want to strive for as a district? And I guess I feel like if we do, you have to start that, and this sort of starts that, or continues that, maybe is a better way to put it. But if that's where we're headed, we need to push forward to that.
Speaking only for myself, would say yes, that's a direction that's important to go in. I think that it's inarguably good for the community and for the students. You know, I think that that goes without saying. I think as we look at absorbing the CDS 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, having universal pre-K or going in the direction of universal pre-K will make that transition smoother and make our services more robust. I do also think that when you're adding brand new classes, like we would do in pre-K, we're gonna get a better than average ED 279 report, right? If you're starting a brand new classroom, that teacher is totally covered by the ED 279, as opposed to our current situation where, oh, that classroom in Harpswell is probably only partially covered by the ED 279. Again, that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but pre-K is a brand new thing. As long as they're fully enrolled, we'll drive some revenue to help cover for it. So I think that there's it's easier to cover economically because of that. But I would say that I think there's a lot of benefit if we were to go in that direction.
And I just want to asterisk what I said is we are not deciding that. The other committees or whoever would get to make that decision, or the board as a whole, but just
You asked my opinion.
thinking, no, totally. And I just want to think out loud now. And if we do feel like as a group, that's where we're going.
Yeah, I mean, for me, adding it here means we're working towards that. And I support that. Like, that's a message I want to.
So,
to send.
yeah, do we feel, okay, so let's, a thumbs up on, and we're going to say, was it printer, which one did we want to take there, pre-K?
We want to
What'd you
say
put
yes,
below?
pre-K,
Yes, pre-K?
not kindergarten.
Yeah, why don't we delete, like you were going to do there, delete kindergarten? And then if we do yes, so let's take a quick, or what we'll be doing is voting yes on this line, and then on another line, we'll vote yes or no on a kindergarten line.
Generally speaking, Heidi, when have you gotten the majority of your kindergarten enrollments? Like at what point calendar-wise, you're like, okay, we've got 95% of our enrollments done?
That's a really good question. I'm actually not really sure from last year, but I think it was a little bit later. And some did come in June. But this year, we're going to put the kindergarten screening out and notice that probably in the next couple of weeks early, so that we can hopefully get kids in there and start screening much earlier than we have in the past.
Yeah, I only asked just thinking about our calendar, right? So we have our second deliberations a week from today, and the board has the final budget hearing and adopts the budget on April 10th. Is that right?
Yeah.
So it's not a ton of time for us to determine if the data supports one of these hires. And so I was just trying to think that through.
But it might, I mean, potentially.
Question, Ryan. If we change this to pre-K, as you've just done, Evan, does that, and we don't approve, or it doesn't come back up, what the committee suggested for the kindergarten? Is that going to limit Heidi, at all if there's no pre-K in the end because of a lack of enrollment?
Is there any chance so it won't fill?
Anything's possible, right?
Yeah.
It's possible. It's a hard thing to predict. I feel like if you build it, they will come. And we have people registering for it and we have, an abundance right now. Not all in Harpswell, but there are opportunities for us to collaborate and bring others in if we need to. So
Yeah.
Is there a minimum? I'm trying to get to the nitty gritty of like, if you had 4 kiddos register for pre-K at Harpswell and we've approved the teacher for pre-K.
Yeah.
um,
there's no minimum amount of students, but I mean, we would want to have at least 8 in there to run the program.
Right.
Or we would probably move them to a different location.
So
that-
if we were in that position and we'd approved the pre-K position, teacher position, what would become of that individual?
If you approved that and you didn't, we didn't run a pre-K program there, we'd have to determine what we would do with that position and maybe we would move it to someplace else. I just don't, it's hard to know right now without all the numbers.
Right, I
I mean, you're
understand.
kind of going on
Yeah.
a trust and faith that this is going to work, but
Right,
yeah, I agree. It's
Yeah.
hard to know.
yep.
If you did end up with 6 Harpswell kids and then there were some more in Brunswick that wanted to come or somewhere else, how does the funding work for that? Does their town pay for?
Their town would pay for some of it, yes, and we'd have to really work out the formula for that. We haven't gotten to quite that level yet, but we know it can be done because of other districts that have done it,
Okay,
so.
well, if we can take kids from other districts, I think that it will fill up.
Yeah.
Because not everybody has a place to go.
Given that we do have sort of a degree of uncertainty in both directions, right? We're uncertain, are we going to get full classroom enrollment for pre-K? Are we going to get full classroom enrollment to require 2 kindergarten teachers at Harpswell? Does it make sense to do what we did last year and just set aside money, approve 1 teacher and set aside money for a second teacher, leave them both sort of first need gets the budgeted one, second need gets the fund balance that we've set aside? Because, if we approve it in the budget, we're going to collect that tax revenue, right? We're going to take that 85 grand from the local share. And if it turns out we don't need it, if 17 kids enroll for kindergarten and we've got our pre-K, then and we've approved both positions, that allotment goes into the fund balance, we've taken it from taxpayers. And so I'm just trying to think, is there a way that we don't know? Like if we knew, if it said 23 kids in kindergarten, I think we'd all say, hire the kindergarten teacher, hire the preschool thing, right? Like, but given that we have that uncertainty, I'm just wondering, are there ways that we can hedge and be in a position to take care of it? But maybe I'm overthinking it.
Yeah,
And I guess that raises a question. Are we actually approving a specific grade teacher or are we approving another teaching position? Like in theory,
I think the latter is what we're technically.
we're technically
Yeah.
just approving a teacher.
Right.
And this is why she's asking for another teacher.
Right,
This is
we're
what she wants
saying
to use it.
we like that justification, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Her total number gets our
Yeah.
thumbs up, I
Yeah.
think.
And then separate question of how do we, as a committee or board, say, we really want you to have a pre-K?
Right.
That's a separate thing, I guess.
And I think we're under an understanding that's what she wants to do.
Oh, I think she
but-
understands, but I don't know if
Yeah.
maybe that's enough. Maybe we
Yeah.
don't need to.
I think that I think that doing it this way, because by April 10th, we should have a better idea, and I will ask them to schedule the screening prior to, which would give us a really much better sense of what we have for kindergartners coming in. It'll also give me time to work on the pre-K program, and I think we can be later in doing that, if that makes sense. Like, we can open that later as needed.
How about if we go back to, sorry, pre-K/kindergarten on both lines, and then it indicates the flexibility that, and then not that one, because,
The one,
yeah. No, you were right there, sorry. You got 10 people yelling at you, Evan, isn't it fun?
Way below.
Down on 20.
Yeah, already is.
Oh, you already did, perfect. Look at you. This is what,
The only thing I wonder about with the, understand with the fund balance, because I thought about that a lot last year, but we might wait too long and not have the people we need to hire for that position, if that
When,
makes sense.
I did not mean to talk over you. I do it all the time. I'm so bad. When do you think you would need to make that decision? And I know that that's a broad question.
I think with the planning that we're doing this year, especially if they hold the screening earlier, we'll have a better idea. And we know, we have a pre-K meeting. It's either Thursday or Friday, I'm not sure. So we'll have a better idea of what we can roll out with that. We'll send out more information regarding the registrations. And I think, after April vacation is the goal, to sort of have an idea of where we're going.
So what I would put out there, just as again, my own thinking, right, is pre-kindergarten parents of Harpswell. If there are 20 kids enrolled by April 10th, it's a no-brainer that we budget for a second kindergarten teacher. Right now, there's 15 with the potential for 2 more on deck. That's 17. If there's 20, there's 22. If there's 24, it's a no-brainer. So there's,
Yeah.
a 3-week period of time or
There
2.5
is-
week period
If
of
there's
time.
20, then you have 2 classes of 10, which is below our minimum.
Agreed.
You have the ed tech.
I mean, we can sort of talk about what we think as a committee is worth that expenditure. I would put out there that we heard from a lot of Harpswell parents, they were concerned, and I don't know that this is the best answer, but I would at least want to consider prioritizing a second kindergarten teacher if we were in the 20s. But I'm with you in that I'm not like, it's not a foregone conclusion for me.
feels to me like with where we are in the process and the time we have in front of us, like saying that if everything comes together, this is what we want, is what the decision we should make tonight. And if it doesn't come together as such, there's, 3 or 4 months still. And Heidi has quite a bit of flexibility within this plan to move things around. And again, us approving this spot, say somebody got hired for that, they could end up being a second grade teacher at Woodside or something. So, and we don't know where needs are going to come in, what the challenges are going to be, but we're saying right now that all things being equal, it does have a direct tax impact. And we would, the budget would include all those levels.
Yeah.
And so that's very real. But I think that she has the flexibility to put that person where she needs it if something changes. But I think it most likely is going to come in at that number, and so we should plan for it appropriately. And while we would never want to tax something that we didn't know we needed, that would go to the fund balance and help offset the following year, so.
The other thing is if we don't need it, we have a new development going in on the Williams Cone side with 38 new housing units. And we know that there are already 9 kids that would end up at Williams Cone School. And I'm not sure, right now we would be able to manage 9 kids, but if every unit fills up with 3 or 4 kids, how, that becomes a whole different story. So we have options if it's in the budget and Harpswell doesn't get the numbers that we think they might get.
So what I'm hearing Ryan suggest, and I think I'm on board, is the committee adding the second position to Heidi's recommendation. And at this point, recommending 2 new positions at Harpswell, 1 kindergarten and 1 pre-K. And if come June 17th, we don't need one of them, we figure it out.
Yeah, Heidi's going to be filling roles at that point in time, and trying to hire for that spot will probably be beneficial, I would think. And so that, it not needing to be in the budget is one thing, but it sounds like it most likely will need to be used elsewhere if that happened.
Yeah, I would also say we'd come back here in 1 week. So if we
Yeah.
set it up like that right now, we all
Yeah.
have a week to think and gather more data, and
Yeah.
we come back in a week and
Yeah.
analyze.
And reiterate, I think we did in Harpswell, and you kind of insinuated tonight, but anybody in Harpswell that can encourage their friends, neighbors to get out and enroll for kindergarten or what would be pre-K next year would be very helpful in us ensuring that we have the team in place.
before you do that, I think we want to keep it down below. We want.
That way you can blame
we
us.
wanna take, identify ourselves as the one that added it in. At least for now.
All right, so let's do this. Let's roll back up a little bit, Evan. And everybody in favor of line 5, pre-K kindergarten? Okay, thank you. And then everybody, let's roll down to that one and just approve it now so that everyone in favor of that one, or not approve it, but everyone is in favor. Thank you. And appreciate the great discussion in getting there and all the work, Heidi, and figuring out the best approach. All right, so next we'd roll into the reductions. These are all the proposed reductions that are unfilled roles that we've had in the district for 12 or more months. I believe that was what we were looking at. And I thought it was relevant just to put these on here and ensure there wasn't anything that caused anybody on the committee concern. So seeing none, how about we take these quick as a slate? If we're okay with saying we support all these reductions? Great. Sorry, I didn't warn you, Evan, you were gonna have to do this tonight. All right, so moving on to the committee ads and requests, we have the one at this point. I will open it up to any thoughts. And I guess this could be committee ads or reductions as well for that fact, so changes really.
A couple questions, and I don't necessarily have specific thoughts, so this may be stuff to plant seeds that we circle back to next week. But looking at the budget summary document that you made for us, Evan, and looking at the article numbers and the percent changes, so I see, big percentage increases in student and staff support and school administration. And I'm just wondering, I always forget what covers student and staff support. I always need a refresher on what that line includes. And then I'm just wondering, because I look at, our 5.3% increase in regular instruction, our 6.98% increase to special education. Those are student-driven, they're very understandable. And I'm just curious, are there any areas that we could maybe shave a little off some of these other lines that are bigger, that at least on paper don't look to be as directly student focusing? Now, that is not me saying I think anyone in this district who works here is not dedicated to students, to be very clear. But just knowing the budget season being what it is, I had that curiosity.
What goes into the warrant articles, part of it. Could you remind me which one is the first one? Was it 6?
It's, six.
Student and staff support. So there are a few sections in here. The first one being student health services. So those would be your nurses. I don't think your counselors go into there, but that's one of the sections. So it would be all your health professionals that go into that. Second would be the improvement of instruction category, which is your RTI, like those are interventionists.
Interventionist kind of
Right.
stuff.
Those are your interventionists. You also have some social workers that fit into that category as well. And then you have your Learning Commons folks, so all the librarians, and there's some software and some AV materials that go into that as well. That's where the Yonder pouches would fit.
Mhm.
And then also this isn't a very big category, but instruction-related technology, so that would be some of the things that Amanda covers. And then the assessment side of things too, all the tests and license we pay for testing.
Evan, do you by chance have that file that you could pull up on the screen?
Yes.
Just if anybody's at home watching and is curious.
And so,
Thank you.
while you pull that up, I'll just say, so that sounds like it's incredibly student-facing. So while that is an increase of almost 10%, it seems like that's a pretty productive 10%. So that answers most of my question.
And just to be clear also on that, we actually went down through every single line and said, what can we reduce or pull out of these lines? And that was kind of like what we say, scrubbing the budget. We really went through everything.
And I totally have faith in that. My question was not to suggest otherwise, I promise.
And listening, that's exactly what you're thinking is what we did, so.
Okay. Pulling that up. The way I set this up too, just a quick run through of how all the information works. Maybe I'll zoom out a little bit. Actually, I don't know if I can when I'm screen sharing, but
The summary tab's great too on this.
yeah, the roll up, how it all rolls up. So each section within the warrant article has specific function codes, which is column L here, and they all are organized by function. So the 2120 function is your student guidance services. And within each of these tabs, there are various functions that roll up into what makes up the warrant. So that's state-driven codes exactly that drive these categorizations. Once again, I can't zoom out because I'm screen sharing here, but
Well, thanks. This is really helpful for, I think, folks, if there's anyone at home, just to kind of see where everything rolls up a little bit. Yeah, just.
I don't want to change the subject here. Are we? Okay. In considering other things to potentially add, at the risk of opening a can of worms that we've already opened, the sub thing. I'm not exactly sure. It's a big expense, universal subs, from Rick Diedick, 9 of them at $595,000. We decided to not go that route. You had said last time, Heidi, that the software that you're working with now feels like it's generating more subs. I guess before we close the idea entirely,
Sure.
I'm concerned that the district needs more subs than we can get on a daily basis. So if you can just kind of talk to that one more time.
Yeah, we've cleaned up our system as for people to apply to the position. We have about 60 or 90 subs in there.
I think it's like 80 right now.
Yeah, 80 subs in there, which before we may have had pending files or people would be submitting applications and not going through the whole process to get to that sub list. And so we've been able to, with the new system that we have, we've been able to really clean that up and look. So that was like one of the first things, and how we post subs. We increased the pay of subs last year. And so the difference is that 9 subs, we on a daily basis need more than 9 subs. And that increase of, because in the past for like during COVID or right after COVID, we were able to add sort of long-term subs, but if we hire them, now they become more than just long-term subs, and we have to pay them salaries and benefits, and that's the law. And so that's why when people are like, why can't we just add it like we did before? And I'm like, well, we have to do it this way instead because the law says so.
I wonder if there's a opportunity to, I think we did this a year and a half ago. We went through and audited all of our, what we pay for subs against the market, and bus drivers and everything, right? And to try to understand where we were having our biggest challenges with filling needs. And maybe there's an opportunity for us too to look at that, because that could be a little bit more cost-effective way to make us more compelling in the market.
Yeah. Or are you saying, Heidi, that it's no longer a problem that we have teachers call out and can't fill their, like we, for the most, on an average day, we have enough subs?
We have mostly enough subs. Sometimes we can't fill positions because of whatever type of position it is. And I think when Mr. Diedick brought it up, the issue was special programs, and special programs is our high needs special education program. And so he and I worked through the situation and talked about solutions for that and what we could do. And really what it boils down to for that type of program is staffing more people in there and making those rotations, because they're high needs programs and sometimes it's harder to get a sub for that. And that's really where that was coming from. But after speaking with him, he came up with some ideas and we worked out some solutions to what he could do.
Okay,
So
that's good.
did I answer your, I don't think I answered your
Yeah, it
question.
sounds like, I mean, I think before when we did, I mean, there's 2 reasons to do the full-time sub. One, you got the same person in there every day. They know the school, they know who the kids, they just cover different classes. And that is nice to have. But what's critical to have is enough adults in the building every day. And we are doing better with that. We're closer to, like, I think there was a time when we had, on an average day, 10 teachers that just weren't covered.
Yeah, yeah. absolutely.
And we're doing better.
It is getting better, and our system is getting more efficient for hiring subs. And so that's something that we'll continue to talk about at our DLT, and making sure that we have what we need and that schools have what they need for subs. But I think it is better. It's not 100% yet, definitely. I mean, it's not an easy position to fill anyway. Say that? No, okay.
We're hosting, weekly orientations. I know that we have some applications in the queue right now for substitutes, so it's something that we're constantly working through, and it's top of mind.
Yeah, and like Jessica, I find the concept very compelling for, I think, a lot of reasons. And I think Amy sort of hit the nail on the head, which is like, you need a certain amount of adults in a school building relative to the classes. Like, that's just critical. And it's really heartening to hear that we're doing better collectively. And again, it's not that, the district has had a problem. It's that everyone has a problem with subs these days, right? This is a 10.8% increase on our budget by itself, that 595,000, right? Obviously, it's an enormous increase, but I would be really interested in sort of hearing it represented next budget season, including a projected savings in the substitute line, right? Like, we've sort of heard it in isolation this year. And I don't know that I would personally want to recommend we take it back up, even though like Jessica, I'm very intrigued by it, and I could imagine myself being persuaded. But I think that I would love to see it brought back, and maybe the number is different, but I'd love to sort of see the expected savings in our daily sub expenditures if we were to do this, right? And so we could sort of better get an idea of what the total impact would be, because, there would be some sort of a trade-off there. Whether or not it equalized is very different, but.
Yeah, I think in quantifying the total need, like what are we actually short on a daily, like our fill rates, whatever, 85% or something. And so we could understand that would be good. And then I do, I think that too, making sure that we're compelling in the market. If there are folks that choose to sub and they're probably looking, or they're registered, have applied multiple districts in the area. And if we have a compelling pay structure or something, they can make it more enticing, which I think we do. I just making sure that we
We'll pull that for next Monday's DLT meeting, our district leadership team, and look at those numbers again. I don't know what it is off the top of my head right at the moment, but we'll look at across the board.
You feeling good with where that's at the moment? Okay.
I just want to be clear, this budget does not include the electric bus.
That is correct. Does not include the electric bus.
Okay, and this would be the time for the committee to decide if we want to include the electric.
Well, and related but tangential, does this include any of the solar development that I know that the facilities committee has been talking about, or would that be an add-on? Okay.
That is not included, but we're talking about, we'll have the presentation on April 10th, but it does not include any upfront costs at the moment based on what we're thinking about doing.
Gotcha. So we could,
Without
in theory,
committing to
deploy that
anything.
without needing to pull from the fund balance, but see maybe some costs in the future or whatever.
Yeah, no, we'll have a presentation on that.
Okay.
It'll be a little more clear.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I think I would say too quickly that if at least the way I've understood it to this point, moving forward with that would result in cost savings, no additional costs incurred. So, understanding what that may be would potentially only be beneficial. That didn't answer your question so much though.
It wasn't so much a question, just a
Yeah.
moment of decision.
Confirmation.
Yeah. I have been in favor of the bus. I have an electric vehicle, but I feel like if we were to do it, it would need to be flawless, given the scrutiny and the anxiousness about it. And I don't have confidence that it would be flawless. So I don't think it's worth the risk. I'm all for the solar on the roof, which will be great.
Yeah.
I would just quickly add to that too. I think in some of the discussions we've had, I think that we are very supportive of the idea. And I think that the discussions that or at least what I'm aware of at the transportation committee level, have been, this was a test to sort of see how this worked and the potential of growing the fleet in the future. And that's where more of the cost savings would come in, was with a larger fleet versus a one-off. And It feels like in the current federal funding environment, or, I'm not sure exactly how to position this, but the stability and I don't have confidence that in 2, 3, 4 years out, that there's going to be additional funds to help offset these right now. And so it just may not be the right time to come into this. And like Amy said, supportive of the solar, it provides us a way to, I think, have a positive environmental impact with the cost savings associated with it. And ensure that we're doing what we can, setting a great example for our students to see and learn from, but being just responsible and mindful of the current moment that we're in as well. So I think that it doesn't sound like we're looking to put that back on, but I think it's probably worth just confirming that we're all in support of that, not putting it on. Okay.
I'm open to persuasion, though.
And I would sort of add on top of what everyone around me is saying, like I'm deeply in favor of an electrified fleet, but I would really like to see, a 5 or a 10-year rollout plan. I don't want to just buy one. I want to sort of say, here's our plan, here's how we're going to do it, here's where the chargers are going to go. And I think that we're doing, it sounds like we're going to be maybe voting later this week on a facilities review proposal, which is great. I think to me, that's a big part of that, is like, how are we planning ahead for a rollout? 'Cause I
The
think that would be-
transportation building as an example is one piece of it, and we don't know that we have the right.
Exactly. And
things in the
that's
right
my
place
big
right
concern.
now, and if that's a go-forward strategy.
Exactly.
This will help us identify what's needed and learn more. And it sounds like too, Evan, through the research you've done, that you had learned some unbudgeted, unanticipated costs that maybe we're not seeing fully seeing, I guess, or fully aware of, that some other districts are experiencing. So just more time for things to flush out.
Yeah, absolutely. Every school district that I've talked to has talked about unexpected infrastructure upgrades that they've needed to make, whether that be digging up their pavement to put conduit underneath the road, or working with CMP because transformers continue to blow. There's just multiple things that pop up, even though you think you have the perfect plan set in place. Unexpected costs have arisen for all of the districts that I've spoken with.
Yeah, I want to echo that's kind of a concern for me too. And somebody said it might not be the right moment. Yeah, I just want to, what you said, Ryan, with the financial instability of the current moment, I don't think that's a cost that we want to risk at the moment in combination with what you're saying. So maybe give it a few years and it might be smoother.
And I guess the one last thing I'd add to it too is we would be still replacing, I believe, with what we replaced in buses this year, some are still, a few of those are diesel. And maybe you may not know that, but I think a couple are diesel, so we would be upgrading those to gas, which has a positive impact as well.
That's correct. Yep, that's correct.
We had 4 diesel and we will have 3. We'll have 3 replaced.
My understanding is that I think it's 2 of the minibuses might be diesel, which aren't ready to be replaced yet, and then 2 of the year 14 buses, which would be set to be replaced, are diesel. So those 2, my understanding, I could be a little bit inaccurate here, would be replaced with gas buses, and those minibuses, which aren't ready to go yet, would come at a later date.
Look at you.
Says it in that presentation. I think Tom said it. All right.
I know 14.4 is a full bus because my daughter rides that.
Right.
14, so we may still have a couple hanging on.
Yep.
Any other thoughts?
Surprisingly, I've got a general one, I know. So right now, we're at a 4.8% increase. It's probably going to go up a teeny bit since we just added, the committee is recommending adding 85,000 to that for the Harpswell School. This is lower percentage-wise than pretty much every other district around us. And so you guys have done a really good job looking at a challenging budgetary and educational environment and making a very, I think, reasonable budget for us. And while 4.8% is not a small percentage in an absolute sense, it is smaller than everyone around us. It really is. it is unfortunate that our ED 279 did not follow track. So our taxpayer percentage is going to be higher than some of our neighboring taxpayer ones. But that's, you know, we have much less control over that component. So I think what you guys have been able to do is pretty significant. And I'm incredibly grateful to you for that. And again, to anyone who is listening, the best thing we can do to help with the CD 279 problem is increase enrollment, build houses that young families can live in so they can send their kids to our schools, please, in all 4 of our towns.
Bodenham meeting for you.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Holly, she
Instead of
channeled
Hudson
her
were
inner
here.
Hudson, I think. She couldn't make it tonight, but now we're channeling our inner Holly. All right, so, could you please, just for 1 second, sorry. There was just one more thing that I had in my mind I wanted to bring up that I captured there. Hmm. All right, and then, so if you could just scroll down to, I'd put the fund balance use, I think not necessarily to, I mean, granted, it's definitely up for discussion. My intent in that wasn't putting it on there to necessarily have it up for discussion, but just maybe to bring realization to this and discuss about it and the impact of this going forward. So that's the same number, and correct me if I'm wrong, as we had in our fiscal year 25 budget. So we're carrying the same additional amount forward. What that does is create a cliff that's out there a little bit, and there's going to be an impact someday for us because of that. We are doing a lot of work, understanding our, working on our audit, trying to understand all of our finances a little bit more thoroughly and understanding what our full fund balance looks like. So I think until we know that, we don't necessarily need to react to anything, but I just think that that's a number that we all need to be mindful of, because if that went from that 2.5 million down to 0, that would be a direct increase to the budget number there. So, again, I'm not calling it out as a negative thing at all. I just I think that we all need to think about that collectively, because that's something that's coming down the road.
I think that's a really good point. And I guess, again, thinking about my comment about the fund balance use earlier, right? So there's some of this money that we know for a fact were runoff costs, right? We put the money for the strategic plan, we pulled from the fund balance for that, and we increased our fund balance usage at the last minute to help cover for an insurance increase that we got that was late. So we upped it by another $40,000 or $60,000. I can't remember the exact number, but it was somewhere in that range. So, you know, those uses are no longer applicable, but that's where I think, okay, cool, we've got the yonder pouches. That's 50,000 out of 140 that, you know, didn't carry over. And so I suspect that it's easy for us to identify non-recurring costs, which those expenditures could fit into. And so that's part of what my comment was about earlier, right? It's just thinking about where's an area we know there have been some reductions in the fund balance use as it was spelled out last year, and what are we allotting those uses to this year? And I think we should keep that figure. I'm not saying we should reduce it, but I think it's good to sort of identify that extra 100 plus is X, it's Y, it's Z. So yeah.
I had a thought and I lost it, so
Sorry.
that's why I'm sitting here like I was going to say something, because I was and I totally forgot.
Well, I might need to check on this, but I'm thinking, so for example, we put 85,000 into a reserve line for a kindergarten teacher last year, but we did not use that.
So it'll go back into the general fund, is
It
that
goes
right?
back into the general fund balance. We increased the capital reserve fund. We have to look at that and see what it was, but I think we added some money to that. And so what we need to do is, I'm saying this out loud now so I don't forget, but we need to go back and look at what our reserve lines are, and we may need to adjust those. And so we'll take a look at that this week and let everybody know how much are each in those reserve lines and see if that changes anything with our fund balance. But we might have already done that.
I gave a document at one point
Sounds familiar.
that laid there was two versions. There was one that kind of showed the fund balance vertically, and then there was one that kind of horizontally showed it over a number of years. And the one that's horizontal should be the one that we reference in terms of how much we've put into various capital reserve accounts or whatever over the past, I think since 2020 was when we did the analysis.
And I remember the other point I was gonna make, because Heidi, you spoke to it a little bit there. But is the capital reserves and really thinking about capital improvements that are gonna be coming in significant number. And again, that isn't necessarily for this cycle, but it's for future planning and kind of almost like what would go on below that fund balance line is just some top of mind pieces that are significant expenses in front of us that we need to be aware, I think we're aware of it, but we need to be thinking on and begin planning for it because it's probably multiple years in how we deal with it.
And that's a good argument for sort of keeping our fund balance powder dry, as it were, and not increasing too much this year because we know what's coming.
Evan will add it to our shared drive so that it's in there for you to look at again. I need to refresh my memory on it too, so.
And I was also going to add, the legislature has published LD 1103, which is their bill to permanently increase the fund balance to 9%. So I don't know how that vote will go, but the bill has been published and it is available
Oh,
to
interesting.
be perused.
Permanently move it to.
That's good.
Yeah, so we'll see what the legislature does, but the bill is out there.
Um,
And I think the chair of the Education Committee is the one who sponsored the bill, so.
You still hopeful of the audit in a week?
Great question. They, as recent as Friday, have asked us for more documentation, which we have been providing them as promptly as possible. I mean, even today, we were sending over to them documents, so can't say for certain, but I will be sure to follow up with them tomorrow.
They're asking for documents and not extensions. That's hopefully positive.
It's hard to believe there are still documents they haven't asked for. Wow.
And have we had a discussion with them about fiscal year 24, is it, that would be next?
As soon as they're done with this one, they'll roll right into the next one.
Great.
So, yep.
So on the
And
next-
what they've said is that it will not take as long because they've cleaned up the stuff that was from the past and should be able to run through that pretty quickly.
That's great.
Fingers crossed, right?
I think coming into our next budget, fiscal year 27 budget, we'll ideally have some pretty good information and be feeling like we're speaking a little bit more specifically. And it'll be your second time around, Evan, so watch out.
Yeah. I'm sleeping very well at night
Me too.
because I'm tired.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's great. We appreciate you. Does anybody else have any more thoughts, questions? Andy, Frank, Tony? No? All right. All right, so thank you. With that, we are ready to adjourn, but our next, actually, before we do that though, sorry, our next meeting scheduled for a week from today, right? The 31st?
Yep.
Coming into tonight, not knowing how tonight was gonna go, there was in my mind, if we'd need to schedule something prior to that, if there was a lot of work to do. I will ask anybody if they feel like that's needed. I don't feel like it is. It feels like we've landed in a really good spot, so our next meeting would be a week from today. But great. So that feels good. And you guys feel good with what we got? Great. All right. Thank you all, and we are adjourned.